We are live. Welcome at a very early time of 8 o'clock UK time to the Elephant and Castle community. Thank you so much for the time changes. Folks, a lot of things happen sometimes. We have to move some schedules around, and Christopher's been kindly enough to move to this time this morning. So we want to get him in live. Christoffer Johansson, who is the CEO and co-founder of HealthyGaming. He's got a mission to eliminate gaming disorders, an internationally recognized disease. So huge aspirations, and I'm very, very interested to talk to Christopher today because I've got a lot of interest in gaming at the moment. So Christopher, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing, buddy?
Thank you for having me. I am doing perfectly fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. You were just talking before, just a little bit of a impromptu trip to the Czech Republic, just for a little bit of R&R with the family. So I'm really grateful. I'm in a little spa town in the east in Czech Republic, and it's beautiful. And so I'm pretty good. I'm actually really excited about today because I know that as someone who's had a journey with issues around substances in the past, I've come in close contact with people who've had, gambling addictions, gaming addictions, and other kinds of things where people would look for exterior solutions to fix interior problems. So I'm really interested to hear more about what you're doing today. But first of all, can you just introduce yourself, Christopher, to the community, who you are and what you do?
Of course. First of all, thank everyone for listening in. My name is Christoffer Johansson. As Nick said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of HealthyGaming. We're on a mission to eliminate gaming disorders and internationally classified disease simply because it's an issue that I've previously experienced myself that I now want to help others overcome. So a little bit about myself. I've been in gaming actually since elementary school. When I was in 6th grade, I had my social science teacher actually own one of those very, very old internet cafes in Stockholm, Sweden. So then we had a class event where everyone went to the internet cafe overnight and played Counter-Strike. So that was how I was introduced to gaming. So of course, a few weeks before that, we were told that, okay, the entire class is going to an internet cafe to play games. Then of course, talk to the parents, you run to the store, you buy the game so you can practice, because of course you want to be good when you're playing. So that's kind of how I was thrown into gaming. And since then, I've just continued playing. And that was at the age 12 or 13, I would say. And I continued playing casually, both having a good time playing it with friends, using it to socialize with my then closest friends as I was growing up in elementary school. Then at age 16, I lost my mother to leukemia, which means that my direction when it came to gaming, unfortunately, took a turn in a way for the worse. So instead of getting the most out of gaming, having fun playing it, instead became my escape from reality, the escape from school, escape from education, because it was such a perfect thing to just get away from, because when you're in the game, all of your focus is what's happening in the game. What am I going to do to win this game? What am I going to play next game? And then it's very easy to zone out from reality. And of course, that led to me playing 12 to 14 hours a day. Of course, not only at the expense of the education, but also my own well-being and health. And of course, when you play that much, you become good at it. So first, I used to compete in an FPS game called Counter-Strike 1.6. It's a 5 versus 5 first-person shooter game. And after that, I started playing a MOBA called Heroes of New Earth, which has its origin in a game called Dota. And I played that a bit competitively as well before going into a rhythm game called Osu, where you're supposed to click circles to the beat. They appear on the screen, and then you control the cursor with your mouse. You're supposed to aim, and then you click the circles to the beat. And in that game, I held the most number one scores in the world between 2015 to 2019 amongst 16 million users. So together at that time as well was also when I actually started losing weight, because I used to be 110 kilos. Now I'm not sure if those of you watching are familiar with kilos, pounds, or whatever, but let's say obese, overweight. So then I started traveling, made some changes to my habits, and also found myself still doing a bit better, but it was still in a way where gaming was being slightly neglected, but it got better during that period. So then, of course, I could still play, I could still have fun. I still held the most number one scores in the world, but this time I was still doing a better job balancing my own health and well-being. So of course, with that in mind, I started traveling, and in 2017, I met the guy I would later co-found HealthyGaming with at a hostel in Cusco, Peru, where we traveled together. And then we went to see Aguascalientes, Machu Picchu. We spent time together traveling, talking about our own experiences in gaming, and I realized that he also had a background with issues in video games, which of course led up to us later coming together the following year to co-found HealthyGaming together, basically to help people who's, like I said, now going through the same issue we faced ourselves. So of course, the first thing after you set up everything with the company was to find is that how are we actually going to help these gamers? So of course, that means a lot of R&D, a lot of testing, a lot of research. He's a policy analyst as well. So of course, you get an extensive and a secondary point of view from the research aspect. And then we eventually landed in that initially we wanted to use a model called the PERMA model, which has its roots in positive psychology to help the well-being of gamers, where the P stands for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for relationships, M for meaning, and A for accomplishment. Because if you look at all those five, then each one of these elements can be elevated with the help of gaming if practiced cordially. But then we realized that this methodology does not really have the empirically supported data to be backed by. So then instead we fell back on something called acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which is basically about helping people accept the fact that they feel the way they do, and then get them to commit, to take action to drive behavioral change. So it kind of combines acceptance strategies with behavioral change strategies. So that's what we use to build our program, which we now serve the well-being of gamers with through an initiative called Project Lucio. That was a long introduction, by the way.
I like long introductions because I just I want to. There's this how kind of how this conversation is going to go, and again, I just want to unpack so much. I'm really interested to know, what was your life like? 16 years old before your mother passed away. So what was your life like you were growing up in Sweden, and was it kind of a normal childhood that you had? Did you have a healthy relationship with gaming then?
Yeah, definitely. Both with gaming as well as parents, with friends as well. Gotta remember, like, this was at a point where I did leverage the advantages of video gaming, because of course you both have the imaginative creativity as well as the social aspect, and when you're playing with your closest friends, it's like you deal with the homework together, then you play the games together, and you just have that small circle of friends and a really normal childhood in a way. But of course, it's one of those things where when you go through a family tragedy or really any personal event that severely changes your surroundings, of course, it's more likely to result in a change of outcomes as well, simply due to what happened. But before that, everything was normal.
I think it's a really good indicator of a thing like a bereavement to a child in his teens. is a source of trauma. And I think, you know, a lot of people recognize it as a bereavement or a loss, but what it does to us, you know, on a cellular level, when we lose someone so close to us at such an age, or at any age. I mean, I lost my mom when I was 40 years old, and it had catastrophic events on me. And, you know, I used alcohol as my way of an escape and as a coping mechanism. And I think that, you know, when we look at, like I said earlier at the introduction, we look for exteriors to fix interiors. So I think it's a really good indicator, Christoffer, is that people who go through these things nobody needs to go through them alone. And there are a lot of, you know, people that pre, you know, health and gaming, there are counselors, there are therapists, there are doctors, there are, you know, our GPs that we can talk to get some guidance on how to deal with things like bereavement. So I think if anybody is going through stuff like that, just know that you don't have to go through it alone, and use Christoffer as an example and as a light to say, you know, and we can get more into like, what did gaming, how did it fill that hole for you? You know, when you're 16 and all of a sudden you find yourself, I imagine, in a darkened room playing games. I know you said it made you disconnect, right? But yeah. How did it make you feel?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where initially, of course, you have the advantages of gaming, and you have that, like, both the fun, the social aspect, also the fact that you're sitting behind the screen, like no one's seeing any of your trouble at all. You're seeing the other person you're talking to in game. So of course, it started out as very engaging and fun experience. And I think it's the same thing for a lot of different things, where when we look at gaming disorder in particular, so by the end of last year, 97.6 million people were facing internet gaming disorder, which is a global prevalence of 3.05% worldwide, which means that, of course, what Nick said, you're not alone. Yeah, you're definitely not. And it's also one of those things where it's very important to recognize that gaming is usually never the main issue and the first issue, but it's, as with a lot of other things as well, it can become an issue if you don't deal with the actual problem. That's why I think it's really important in a way to be able to take a step back and recognize, like, yeah, this is the problem, and if I fix this, of course, gaming is no longer going to be a problem. So like, we can take my company's work as an example. What we do is we work with acceptance and commitment therapy, which is evidence-based psychology, but its evidence is based on helping people facing issues with anxiety, stress, depression, low self-esteem, and low self-confidence. So of course, by tackling those issues, you also put people in a better position to deal with their gaming habits. Because like I said, gaming is usually not the core issue. Just like as an example you made before as well, with gambling, as well as with other disorders as well, it's usually not the core or the initial issue. And all of those things have one thing in common, is that they usually have a trigger. And of course, step one towards resolving a problem is identifying there is one. And that's why it's even more important to remember that there are other people going through it right now. There are other people who have gone through it before, and there are also other people who will go through it in the future. So if you don't find yourself motivated to only solve it for yourself, so that you can actually look at the issue you're facing yourself, it's like, do your best to overcome it and get the help needed, and then capitalize on it to help others, because there are going to be others facing the similar issues later. And I think there's quite the fulfillment in doing that as well, because take me as an example. I've gone through this issue. Now I've built up my business around helping others facing the same issue, and it really creates a sense of purpose. You both have this sense of purpose, you have passion to work for it, and also when you help others, it makes yourself feel great. So of course, it's also one of those things where there's a lot of opportunities after you've overcome the issue. But in order to do a good job looking out for others, like I mentioned before, with relationships, with education, your career, step one, you need to take care of yourself as well. And that's why it's really important to be able to identify, can I do this on my own, or do I need help? And if you need help, there's no shame in getting it. Like, everyone gets help sometime in their life. It's like, I've even gotten help afterwards. I mean, I've gone back to look at the research done. Of course, you have your time where you self-reflect. It's like, yeah, I didn't do this really well, but it's okay, because it's a learning experience. And even if you tried overcoming it yourself, it's like, great that you tried. But if it didn't work out the first time, you tried the second time as well in another way. And I think that's really important to recognize as well, because not all issues is overcomable in one way, and different people will need different solutions as well. And that's why it's important to identify the problem you're facing as an individual, because if you know the problem you're facing, you can get the help that you actually need to resolve it when you're unable to solve it on your own.
You basically just outlined my life, so thank you for that.
I
As you
got
talk, all I hear is, like I use alcohol because it was a solution. It was a solution. Then it became a symptom to the problem. So once alcohol stops working, it becomes a symptom to the problem, and then you start getting into I think when the first time we spoke, do you remember I mentioned Dr. Gabor Mate? Did I remember?
Yeah, you mentioned
Yeah,
it, but I still have it in my to-read list.
Yeah, and it's just really simple. You don't treat the addiction, you treat the trauma. You treat the bereavement, you treat the abandonment, you treat the violence as a young child. You treat these things, and then there's no more need for the exterior stuff as a solution. So, what I see is as a difficulty with gaming is because it's a fairly, the way gaming has evolved over the last 20 years is just, I remember probably 30 years. Actually, I got my first Sega 32-bit Mega Drive, the Sega.
I have to ask, what games did you play on your Sega? Because that was one of the first consoles that I played as well.
The NHL 94, I think it was.
All right.
So yeah, that was the classic game where you cracked guys and their little bodies fell on the ice and they cracked their head and blood came out. Yeah, and then I think I had Sonic and stuff, but the NHL was the main game because I was a hockey player. But from what it's gone now into this kind of immersive world where you can really get lost. And I know you talked about the importance of the social aspect of it too, and I see it with kids in my life today where I didn't realize that as you're talking about you said you guys did homework together, you socialized together, you just talked through through a game, and it's as much a social interaction it is a actual gaming interaction, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, because it becomes one of those things where it's like, I'm sitting here today, I met some of my closest friends in my life today through the games I played, and those are people from the other side of the world. Like, we can take it as an example. I have an American friend who I initially played games with through another mutual friend. And it's like, the first time I met him in person was on the other side of the earth. It's like a Swedish and an American guy plays games together. Where did you meet for the first time? Oh, we met in Japan. Oh, well, okay, interesting. And I think it really shows that the social aspect and cross-cultural aspect really drives an interest. It sparks motivation. And also what you said with how games developed over the last 20 years, it's not only the games that's developed, it's also the psychology behind gamification that also enables game developers today to do a much better job capitalizing on the social engagement in order to get people engaged. And that now we're not just talking about engaging with other players, but also engaging with the characters. You build your own characters in a whole different way today than you could do in a game 20 years ago. Like we can take NHL. NHL as a great example. In 94, you're mentioning a guy getting tackled and blood comes out of his head. Now, 20 years later, you can manage your own, like you have your own team, you have a career mode, you have single game mode, you have multiplayer, you play online against other people. Like it grows, and it grows in a lot of different ways. And I believe one of the key things as well, coming back to what we're discussing with the issues, is also being aware of how different games can affect you in different ways. Because taking it as an example, single player games and multiplayer games, specifically women, are prone to face a lot of different issues depending on the games they play. Because when it comes to the single player games, you're more likely to face gaming disorder, where of course the gaming takes prevalence over other daily activities such as work, education, relationships, etc., because you sit there, play games for many hours. But when it comes to multiplayer games, you have a whole different range and aspects of problems, where you have in-game sexism, gender-based discrimination, and all those type of things as well. And that's why I'm shedding a light on it now, as there might be parents listening in as well, is that it's really important that you understand more about the game your child plays, because different games have both different advantages. Of course, when you play a single player game, you don't get the same social interactions, but then it might help you a lot when it comes to developing problem solving skills instead, because you're solving these puzzles, these in-game missions on your own. Whereas when you play multiplayer games, it's about teamwork. You gotta lead the team in game to make sure that you play better than the other teams, so you win. So, and of course, those different types of games develops a whole different set of qualities, but it also means that the potential issues that you might face because of it are a lot different. And I believe that's why in our case, as an example too, that we actually fall back on some of those core general issues, such as stress, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, because it's one of those things where if you start there, those are things that people can face regardless if they play single player or multiplayer games, because they're often triggered by individual experiences. And like in this case, as a parent, it's very good to stay aware and actually communicate with your kid, like what's so good about this game, and also interact with them, because there are a lot of parents today who does play games with their kids and they find it a lot of fun. Like it's a great interaction between, like, let's say your case, father son, like let's say father daughter, let's say mother daughter, mother son. Like you can have a lot of fun playing games with your kids and also get a comprehensive understanding of the game and how it works. So you can make sure that your kid does not only practice cordial usage of gaming, but also get the most out of their experience.
I'm getting you. My internet's going off a little bit wonky, right? But I understand.
I talk a lot.
You know, what I'm interested in here now is about the safety aspect, because I hear you're saying it's good for parents to get involved, but I also see that games are a way to get to kind of occupy the children while parents are going about their kind of daily routines. So it's like, oh, put little Johnny and Susie in the room with the Nintendo Switch so that they can kind of get on with things. Like, how do you kind of look at it? And I know now kids are so smart, they can kind of bypass security systems and override certain things. Like, how do you like keep an eye on your children with regards to the safety aspect and actually creating boundaries around gaming?
What I believe is that, of course, you mentioned a good point with the parental controls, but it's really important to recognize as well that there are ways around parental controls, which is why I really like to encourage communication. Because as a parent, if you understand the advantages of gaming as a kid, like let's say you tell your kid stop playing games. Like, they're likely gonna tell you to, like, either say, no, I want to play games. But whereas if you instead come with a more comprehensive understanding, it's like, yeah, when you play this game, you can actually develop these and these skills, and gaming is good for you if done right. Then of course your child is going to be more susceptible to listen to you and to what you have to say. And I believe that's the key, because as good as parental controls are, just like you say, there are ways around it. And both as a child, but also as an internet troll, like if you want to do harm to someone, like let's say as an example, you have a game where everybody has a unique account, you're just going to create a new account. But that's why it's so important as a parent to be communicative with your child, and also, like I mentioned before, understand the game they play, because different games requires different ways of operating around them. Because let's say myself as an example, I have the background in competitive gaming. Was my parents supportive about it? Not really, but I have friends as well who also did the same journey in competitive gaming. Were their parents supportive about it? No, they weren't initially, until they saw the paychecks and the actual value they were making, like the actual financial values. Like, oh wow, you're actually making quite a lot of money from playing games. Maybe there is a susceptible career to it. And I believe that's really important to understand as well. But that's where communication comes in, because as a parent, you need to make sure that your child is comfortable communicating with you about their gaming experience. Not only look at the opportunities like, hey, I want to be a professional gamer, I want to be a content creator, I want to play games all day, but also coming at it from another aspect, like, is it a viable thing? Like, could my child actually make a good career in this while still maintaining good and healthy habits? It's like 1% can. Let's be honest, 99% cannot, but there is still the 1%. And then as a parent, that's why it's so important to have the communication with your child, because for all you know, your child might be exceptionally talented at the game. And then it's like, why should you not support it if your child has the opportunity for you to, in a way, now I'm gonna might go a little bit out of line, but say, like, let's say you're really good at gaming, you're gonna become financially independent quite quick. And then of course, as a parent, if you can support your child along that journey, make sure that they stay healthy, they control everything else, you have a backup plan in place. Like, what do you do when you fall off the top in the game? Then you can actually drive a positive influence from gaming in multiple aspects, because there are, like, it's a booming industry. In 2021, it was expected to grow from 2.81 to 2.96 billion gamers, but the truth is that it actually grew to 3.2 billion gamers instead. Of course, as a result from the pandemic and people spending more time inside, which kind of excelled that growth further. But looking at the number of gamers, like, that's why I keep on saying, like, the 1%, because it's hard when you have so many people you compete against.
So how many gamers? You said 3 billion?
3.2 billion. Yeah.
So almost like almost a third of the people, the 8 billion people, right? So 3 billion people.
I haven't counted them all.
That's a lot of people to play games.
I would need a little bit of time for that, but
yeah. But you know, if this is the thing that I want to get into now, because the gaming industry obviously wants to attract more and more people. They want to get people into the games as much as they can. Much like a social media platform wants to hook people in and keep as many users in their platform as they can. So how, I don't want to say noble, but how responsible is the gaming industry? And obviously someone like you has to come along and create a platform called HealthyGaming. So is it responsible enough? Is it just all user kind of get money, get users, or do they have some kind of responsibility towards their users?
I would say that both, from an optimistic and a pessimistic perspective, is that we can start with the pessimistic one. No, not at all, because of course you have the gap between game developers and the ESG aspect, where of course the way game developers make money is that you make money by driving addiction, of course, because usually you have something called whales, where a small user base of players makes those companies a lot of their actual revenue. And of course, that's driven by doing a good job with gamification and driving addiction in a way. And that's just a very, very small part of it, like the gaming aspect. But then you also have, in terms of sponsorships, in terms of affiliations with content creators, we're both seeing positive change. But still, when you look at some of the most common sponsors of content creators in game and the people who your child watches, is like it's VPN companies, it's betting companies, it's crypto, it's gambling, it's supplements. And like when you see those kind of players being the main players on platforms such as Twitch when it comes to sponsoring in terms of number of people, like of course it's not responsible enough in a way, because from those content creators, I completely understand them why you take those affiliations, because you're trying to make a living out of gaming. Those companies comes in with a bag of cash and suddenly you can do what you love to do. Of course, you're going to be very inclined to take the cash, because it's not going to directly backfire on you, but the people watching you, your community, the people buying these services, that might create unhealthy behavior. But the good thing as well is that together with the growth of esports in general, you see a lot of more companies coming into esports. You also see a new level of awareness with content creators, where you also have these content creators practicing healthy and cordial habits, these content creators that actually are in a position where perhaps 5 years ago they couldn't say no because they needed money, but now they actually can say no and only take the more ethical sponsorships. And I believe it's really important to provide the support needed for content creators to have the financial resources to continue doing what they love whilst positively influencing the members of their communities. And of course, it's something that if you take a step back, look at it pessimistic, of course, not really there yet, because then there would be more ethical big players on those platforms, but it's getting there. I mean, a lot of people are changing for the good. You're becoming more aware. Like the position for women in esports is shifting for good as well. And sure, are we home? Not yet, but the progress is still being made. And looking at it from a strategic point of view, is the way you change a status quo is getting enough people to speak up and act in a way. And it's going there.
I'm really interested to know kind of at your, I have a feeling about this, but when you were at your peak of earning, and when you were also in your darkest place, how close were they together?
I think for myself, like when I was in competitive gaming, I didn't really care about earning because I was still working on the side as well, because I still had my career that I was looking to pursue at the time. So I didn't have to go that route. So I didn't actually have to seek out those type of affiliations, those type of sponsorships or agreements at all.
Right. But when you were at the peak, when you were at the best of the best of gaming, right? When you were at the best, you had all the most like first places, but where were you at the darkest, where you were 110 kilograms and you were like...
That was before that.
Okay.
That was on the way there.
That was on the way there.
Yeah, because of course it's also coming back to the positive aspect as well, is that I think more and more, not just players, but organizations are realizing that your performance peaks when you're in a healthy condition. And that doesn't just come down to the physical, how you feel, fatigue, but also the mental aspect. Because let's say you're playing a tournament, like we could take Dota as an example. The international last year had a prize pool of about $40 million. And then when you're sitting there on stage playing, then you're gonna have a lot of nerves. You're gonna have a lot of fatigue from, let's say you play a series of 5 games. Every series is like, every game can go like 1 hour, like 60, 80 minutes. It can end in 25 minutes if you make a mistake early, or if you capitalize on the opponent's mistake early. And it's like, you need to stay like, you need to have and maintain razor sharp focus. And of course, the way you get that is by staying healthy yourself. And I believe more and more organizations are realizing that. So you have some of the biggest organizations in the world today who does implement exercise in their players' everyday lives, because the health performance connects with in-game performance clearly. Now you see, I kind of twisted it around, because I think looking at it from that aspect makes a lot more logical sense than looking at it from darkness versus competitive gaming, because different people faces different experiences. And after all, with a global prevalence of 3.05%, you still have 96.95% of all the gamers not facing gaming disorder. And you also, apart from that, it's estimated that about 10% of all gamers face some kind of mental, physical, or social health issue related either directly or indirectly to their video gaming habits. But that still means 90% aren't.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, it's kind of the thing, that so many people do have a healthy relationship with gaming. And I think that you've learned so much, and you've got the word entrepreneur in your title, right? And you're 26?
28, I think.
28. Okay.
Yeah.
You're young.
It should be 28.
Yeah. You're young. You're a young man.
It is.
I think maybe I just remember you the age. Maybe it was someone else. But what were the things that you learned, in your time that gave you the skills to go, do you know what? Because you talked a lot about data and research and analytics, and you and your business partners are obviously very, very bright men.
Keep it coming, please. I'm kidding.
Well, we've had a couple of conversations, and there's a lot to what you do, and it isn't just a question of a bunch of guys who have an idea who can create some kind of platform. It is, you do all this evidence-based fact-finding research to back up everything. And are these things that you just were intrinsic into you as a person, or are these skills that you learned, through gaming?
I would say, like, can you become more analytic with the help of gaming? Yes. Did I do it? In all honesty, no. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. No, I did not. I think for my case, like, what I personally bring to the table in terms of strength in my team, of course, comes down to the experience and background in competitive gaming, and face the issue myself, and being able to clearly put myself in the gamer's shoes. And of course, combining that with a bit of personality as well. Because looking at it, I believe it's also really important not to just identify what you know and what you're good at, but also what you don't know. And that's why you choose your business partners and the people you do it with the way you do. Because if you surround yourself by good people, you're going to have people who's bringing a whole different skill set into, different personality, different background. And not only that, but also a sense of accountability. Is that if you get surrounded by good people, they're going to hold you accountable for your actions, which of course is something that drives up the quality in the work you do. Because for me, it's like I mentioned, I had the full-time job as well alongside the gaming, and then, like, that was in IT, that was in tech, and so I come from a tech background, and sure, I have that knowledge as well, but ultimately, like, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a doctor myself. It's like, I don't know this. I need to surround myself with other people who has this expertise. And I believe it's the same thing looking back at it as well when it comes to asking for help, is that it kind of goes hand in hand. It's that you identify that you don't know this or you cannot solve this problem. Then you surround yourself with people, with tools to solve it. Simple as that. And they really do go hand in hand.
You know, a little bit ago, you were talking about how your experiences, you know, you turn these experiences into a position where you can help others, and that's your journey. And I don't. Have you heard of? Did I mention Joseph Campbell to you the first time that we spoke? The hero's
I don't
journey.
think so.
There's a Joseph Campbell. You know, he's written books called the Hero's Journey, and there's a documentary called The Hero's Journey, and he basically charts, you know, the journey use Lord of the Rings and Frodo. You know, he's sitting in the Shire and he's feeling a little bit restless and something's not quite right. And then all of a sudden this big wise wizard comes and presents him with a challenge. And, you know, the challenge is to go into the big dark forest and to do all this stuff. And he needs a little fellowship of people around him to help him do it. And then they go into the forest, the dark forest, and they have all these quests and tasks that they have to do. And then they're confronted with the dragon, their biggest fear. And then they slay the dragon, collect the gold, and bring it back to the Shire and share it. And that's the hero's journey. And basically all kind of mythological stories and everything from Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, they all follow that same journey. And I'd say with you guys, now that you're in a place where you've got your group of people around you to help build what you're building, but have you slayed that dragon yet? You know, have you conquered the thing that you guys are most afraid of to share it? Now, is that you in your darkest moments, you know, in the gaming world, you know, when you were really lost and you felt lost and disconnected?
I think being very straightforward about it, like by the end of last year, still 97.6 million people were facing the issue, looking to take on. Like, no, it's not done. It's not solved. Like, it's far from done. Like, it's complex looking to solve a global issue, and you're not going to be able to do it yourself. That's why I think also, like, you need both good people around you, but you also need people with complementary skill sets. You need strategic partners along the way. You need other people that can do things and knows things that you don't. And I believe it's a blessing in disguise, the fact that you're aware that you're not aware, but still it doesn't mean that the problem is solved. It just means that you need to equip yourself with the tools needed to resolve it. And like I said before, step one towards resolving a problem is identifying there is one. Now, I'm not saying like there's a shit ton of problems, but obviously by the end of last year, 97.6 million people are still facing the issue. So it would be naive to sit here and say like, yeah, we slayed the big dragon. It's like slay the big dragon is like eliminating that number and you're done.
Right.
And after that is like, sure, you can get the number down, but then you gotta go from a stage of problem solution to problem prevention as well. And of course, like I cannot really share it to the public, but of course there's a plan we have in place, not only for solving the problem, but also for problem prevention in the future. And I mean, it's a long-term process, and it's a lot easier said than done. That's why it's important to sit here and be humble about it. Because it's not like you're gonna wake up, get a cup of coffee. Today I'm gonna solve a global issue, finish a cup of coffee, go out, you're done, come back for lunch. It's like, no.
Well,
That's not gonna happen.
There's obvious times for naps. You got to make sure you have a nap. Every once in a while, take a nap.
Oh yeah,
I know you said
absolutely.
you can't share everything, but what are the plans? Like I know you talk about seed funding and investment, and you know what are those next steps over the next 6 to 12 months for you?
I mean, of course, I think in our case it's a lot about data, because like looking at it from a problem prevention perspective is that, of course, right now we have Project Lucy Alive for gamers, but then it's also about capitalizing and utilizing that data you get from helping gamers in order to prevent the problem for the next generation of gamers. So I believe a lot of the work is going to be focused on that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't only go to the gamers, but you also need to in a way, make sure that everyone has the tools they need to practice cordial usage of gaming. And the reason why I'm saying tools is because there might as well be knowledge. Like knowledge how to do it, understanding of the game, kind of like I emphasized before on the communication, is that right now you're watching it, like the person watching this, you're watching this through a tool. We're talking here, you utilize the tool, you get an idea that, yeah, I'm gonna talk to my kid about this, get a better understanding. Then you use a tool to help your kid practice cordial usage of gaming. And of course, long term, it's also important to make sure that everyone has what they need to practice cordial usage of video games, because I love games, and games are so good when used in a good way.
Yeah, me too. I got a PS5, and I'm Sackboy is my favorite game right now. So
all right.
Yeah, it's a family game. It's kind of fun. But Christopher, we've run out of time. I told you this 45 minutes just flies by.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for another 45, but
well, how about we get you on again? Let's get you on again in a few months, just with another update. There's more things that we can kind of, like you say, there's tools, and let's get you on again in a few months. I want to still arrange another chat with you and my business partner. So maybe we can do that next week. I'll get in touch with you on WhatsApp. But how can people get in touch with you now? Like if there's any kind of questions that people might have, how do you want them to get in touch with you?
I would say either send me an email on Christoffer.ch with double F at healthygaming.info, or use the contact form which we have live for our platform for gamers if relating to the issues gamers face on projectlucio.com.
Okay, why don't you send me the links for that, and we'll put them in the Facebook feed. And again, buddy, thank you so much for this chat. And let's arrange another Zoom next week or in the week after that, and we can have a proper other catch up with Melissa, because I know she's interested in meeting you too. So thanks, buddy.
Of course.
Let me just I saw you quickly typing, so I'm just going to copy that stuff here.
Yes, I sent to you.
Yeah, you're so efficient, dude.
It's almost like I've done it before, believe it or not.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, okay?
You as well, Nick.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget to join me at 11 a.m. on Thursday for a Tough 3 Tender gathering. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.